Sandra Chance never saw the car that killed her. Just back from several years working in New York for a multinational computer company, she looked the wrong way as she stepped off the Manchester pavement. It was an easy mistake. She was so used to the traffic driving on the other side of the road. The driver was not to blame, but he didn't stop to find out. The funeral was a quiet affair at the local church in the Manchester suburb she had moved to just a few weeks before. Though she was originally from the area, she had no family there, no family anywhere, except the children. Richard and Jade were just 15 when their mother died. Twins, they had always shared everything: toys, games, books, arguments, and now grief. Rich typically kept things bottled up, but now the sadness was there. His eyes were welling with tears as he stood with his sister in the front pew. Jade let the tears run freely down her cheeks as they listened to the priest's words about their mother, about their loss, their bravery, and their devotion. Rich preferred to keep his emotions to himself, but Jade would know how he felt. She always knew how he felt, and that was all that mattered. He didn't care about anyone else. He didn't have anyone else now. A few other locals had turned up, out of respect rather than love, but none of them had known Sandra Chance or her children. Mary Gilpin was the only person who knew her at all, as a neighbor and childhood friend. The twins were staying with her now, but Mary's husband, Phil, had never liked children and had been quick to involve the authorities. He hadn't even come to the church. As the priest mentioned Mary Gilpin's name, she looked up. Jade glanced at her, smiled sadly, and looked away again. Rich didn't react at all. Then the door at the back of the church creaked open. The sound seemed even louder in the still moment of silence. Rich looked around. He stared at the man who stepped quietly into the church and closed the door behind him. Rich watched the man cross himself and go to the nearest pew at the back of the church. He was a big man, but he moved quietly and easily. When he sat, there was a stillness about him, but also a contained strength. He looked about 40, with a rugged, experienced face and short blonde hair. He was wearing a black suit and might have passed unnoticed and unremarked in a crowd, except, Rich saw, for the man's eyes. They were bright blue, like Rich's own, and moved in a slow arc, as if he were taking in every detail of the church and people around him. Jade had also turned, and she too saw the man. The man's eyes met hers just for a second, then moved on to Rich. The two children looked at each other and frowned. Jade squeezed her brother's hand. She flicked her head to get her hair out of her eyes, and they both knelt to pray. The cold autumn sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows of the tombstones across the churchyard. Jade and Rich stood together a little way from the grave.
"She should have looked the right way,"
Jade said. Like her brother, she had a trace of American accent. Not much, but enough for people to notice.
"She was always warning us, telling us to be careful, not to be in too much of a rush."
"Don't blame her," Rich told her.
"I'm not,"
Jade protested.
"It's just—"
She sniffed and looked away.
"She should have looked."
The man from the back of the church was talking to the priest and Mrs. Gilpin. There was another woman with them, a middle-aged woman with obviously dyed hair. Rich knew she was with social services. She was supposed to be looking after him and Jade until someone decided what to do with them. He couldn't remember her name, and he didn't care.
"Who is that man?"
Jade said.
"I feel like I've seen him somewhere before."
Rich shrugged. "More social services?"
"Why are they here?"
Jade said. "We can't stay with the Gilpins forever." Jade stared at him, her tear-stained face framed by her long blonde hair. Rich sighed and went on.
"Didn't you hear Mr. Gilpin last night, going on at her again about how she can't be expected to look after us, and it isn't fair on him?" "Maybe we can go back to New York," Jade said. "Stay with Charmaine and her family."
"Yeah, right," Rich muttered. "Like one of your old school friends is going to take us both in." He could sense Jade glaring at him, and looked away. The woman from social services was shaking the strange man's hand. She glanced over at Rich and Jade, then walked quickly away. The man seemed to gather himself, squaring his shoulders and taking a deep breath that made his chest heave. Then he and Mrs. Gilpin came over to where the twins were standing. "Hello?" the man said. His voice was deep and rich, and he tried to smile. He reached his hand out toward Rich, such a natural gesture that Rich found himself taking the man's hand and shaking it. The man's grip was firm and confident. Rich felt his insides turn to water as the man introduced himself. "John Chance," he said. "I'm your father,